Chronic migraine, 15 or more headache days a month, each lasting 4 hours or more, can make me feel like a spectator in my own life.
Botox, onabotulinum toxin A, prevents headaches in adults with chronic migraine. It's not for those with 14 or fewer headache days a month. It's the #1 prescribed branded chronic migraine preventive treatment.
Prescription Botox is injected by your doctor. Effects of Botox may spread hours to weeks after injection, causing serious symptoms. Alert your doctor right away, as difficulty swallowing, speaking, breathing, eye problems, or muscle weakness can be signs of a life-threatening condition. Patients with these conditions before injection are at highest risk. Side effects may include allergic reactions, neck and injection site pain, fatigue, and headache. Allergic reactions can include rash, welts, asthma symptoms, and dizziness. Don't receive Botox if there's a skin infection. Tell your doctor your medical history, muscle or nerve conditions, including ALS, Lou Gehrig's disease, myasthenia gravis, or Lambert-Eaton syndrome, and medications, including botulinum toxins, as these may increase the risk of serious side effects.
Why wait? Ask your doctor, visit BotoxChronicMigraine.com, or call 1-800-44-BOTOX to learn more.
Good evening, everybody. It is Jay Scott. This is The Hook Rocks, the ultimate rock community podcast. Hope you're doing well. Hope you're staying safe. Hope you're enjoying another day on lockdown. The stay-at-home orders have been lifted in some places around the country. And as I've said on other episodes, myself and others, we're still here doing the same old every day until at least the end of May. We don't know what's going to happen as of June 1st. But we'll just kind of wait and see. But like I've said before, it's important to stay busy, stay active as much as you can, listen to music, read some books, watch some Netflix, talk on the phone, have conversations, try to remain social with people, try to reach out to those friends you haven't talked to in a while, have some fun, have some laughs on the phone, find a way to keep the mind fresh and keep it active. I'd like to welcome our next guest on the podcast. He is a renowned LA promoter. Some people refer to him as Mr. 80s. I'd like to welcome Julian Douglas to The Hook Rocks. What's going on, Julian? How are you?
Hey, I'm doing great. Actually, I was in really great spirits until the way you started off talking about, being down on lockdown and how others, are not on lockdown. And yeah, it was all in a great mood. So you mentioned that because I don't know if you're, aware where, you've got listeners all over America, and we're kind of freaking out here right now because there's this mysterious lack of information out there where late last night, one of the board officials of LA County came on and gave a speech telling everybody that Los Angeles County was going to be under lockdown until August. And of course, social media erupted because if you're familiar with at least California, our governor has given the shutdown till May 15th. So many of us have all just been kind of rejoicing that we're getting to that point where we finally may be able to start, safely living life again, however the parameters are going to be. And then all of a sudden we get this notification last night that, we're going to be on lockdown till August. Wow, missed that one. And now today there's all these, Mayor Garcetti came out and said, we just want to let you know that although we have announced and talked about a certain date, that doesn't mean it's not flexible. So now they're almost kind of, backtracking a little on some of the things they said. Newsom still has not even come out to give his word yet what's going on with the May 15th, that original deadline. So it'll be real interesting to see how we lead our lives. And, me as a promoter, I'm sitting there. I don't think I've read the news, which is not a thing that I ever want to do with the news these days. But I can't imagine reading more news than I have just because of what I do for a living and how it affects so many people that I know friendship-wise and business-wise, being a promoter. And yeah. So anyway, it's a little long, drawn-out thing. But Jay, how you doing?
I'm doing good, man.
Other than that, great. It's Southern California. And, actually, the good news is today they've officially lifted the ban on beaches. So it's about 80 degrees out here in Southern California. We are officially allowed to go to the beaches. I chose not to go to the beach, but to talk to you. So that's how important it is. And mind you, though, we are allowed to go to the beach. We must wear a mask on the beach. So that should be some very interesting tan lines you're going to see on social media this weekend. But mind you, and I that was probably a bad thing to say because, Steve, you're allowed to use the ocean. You can go swimming. You can go surfing. You are not allowed to use the bike paths and skating of any kind. And, oh, yes, you are not allowed to sunbathe on the beach. So I should have corrected myself. So I guess you may get some interesting tans wearing those masks as you walk across the sand to go use the water and walk back. So I just want to make sure, giving my public service announcement, everybody listening out there, what is and what isn't allowed. So there you go.
Well, it's interesting because it seems to be a common theme with what's been going on since March, where really, because it's so unprecedented and we don't really know a lot about this virus, we're still learning more about it every day. It's kind of like, well, I think this may work. I think this may work. I don't know. But the one thing that I've noticed is like there's no formal guidelines as to what you should do when you step out of the house. And I think everybody needs to come up with something, get on the same page or whatever, because we know it's serious. I'm not downplaying the seriousness of it because it is deathly serious.
Can't agree more.
Right. But you got to communicate. You got to tell people what's expected of them when they leave the house and what you have to have on, whether it's a mask, whether it's gloves, how far away you have to stay away from somebody, what capacity levels are going to be like, whether it's the grocery store, a restaurant, wherever it is. That needs to happen, and I don't see a lot of that, and I think that's what's part of the frustration with everybody, trying to figure out what to do.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head right there, and there's no question about that. I think, unfortunately, we are very educated people these days due to access to social media. And with that said, how much is out there for us and how many of us don't have a concept of really what we are supposed to be doing. You just got done saying that. My wife runs a restaurant in Hermosa Beach and serves there. And when she's not doing the whole actressing thing, and unfortunately the whole actress community, acting and actress, community is shut down, just like the whole music industry. And yet her restaurant, again, just reopened recently, just doing takeout and delivery, doing that famous thing. And they're a high-end kind of raw seafood type of place. So it's very tricky for her. She's not able to return to work because the work is not there. There's all this info being given out and nothing is being said about the restaurant industry in a whole. When will that open up and how will it open up? Obviously, you and I, I'm sure, can sit here just like everybody else saying, especially the people in the restaurant going, hey, the restaurant business has got to be one of the cleanliest in general businesses there is, because they've always are dealing with health inspectors, and they would be a place that you would think easily enough, what do we need to do to open up? What are going to be the guidelines for us and the safety of our patrons that are going to be coming in, so that we can start implementing that or getting it ready to go. But again, there's no information out there. There's nothing being said. And then that goes back to, like, here I am, Mr. Concert Promoter, and here you are talking about rock and roll every day. You want to talk about mystery. That's probably the saddest part of all, because in California, they've deemed the term, stages, and stage 4, the last stage, is concerts. So we sit here in California going, well, what's that mean? Because originally the governor here said right off the bat, and this was, like you said, back in March, right off the bat, there will be no more concerts and there will be no sporting events until 2021. And that was the law that was handed down. And yet here we are, we've got gray areas with certain dates and certain things opening. And they keep talking about bookstores and retail stores, and there'll be pickup, but you can't go in, and you can do. So they're at least starting to show guidelines, but they've reiterated that there's a couple things out there, like concerts, that will be the very last to happen. And yet again, they haven't even started to touch upon the whole aspect of what that encompasses. And that's what's crazy in this day and age. It's not only you start going, well, the first thing that people think when they hear, oh, there may not be any concerts till the end of the year, you go, oh, crap, that's, I'm not going to get to see a live show till then. And then it gets deep because you think, well, there's venues that have businesses. I just got done talking about my wife's restaurant. They don't even know what they're going to do as far as opening for dining and how they will be opening. Will it be 25% capacity? Who's wearing masks, who won't? How is it going to work with the food? Are they going to have to put up plexiglass between tables? Who knows what? But the point is, they know they're in there, but nobody's given them any kind of direction yet. There's no formal letter that's gone out from the state of California saying when restaurants open, this is what you must do. Kind of seems like they would be able to do that. But here's the music business. And the music business, though, people out there are dying for concerts. They want to see live music. But that's great. And we appreciate that. But it gets deeper because there's the musician and his family at home. There's everybody involved around music, from the venue itself trying to figure out how it's going to continue to stay open and be a business, an actual, brick and mortar location during this time. The employees they've had, making sure they're still taken care of. And when they do open the doors, are those employees going to be able to come back and do that job? Or have they lost those employees that eventually had to go find work elsewhere that couldn't hang out waiting for the job to return? And you talk about all the vendors that are involved with these places and merchandise. And then again, when you're talking concerts, I mentioned something about restaurants. You think about concerts, you're talking, well, here I am out in, the LA area, are we talking about small venue places? I do a lot of work for St. Rock and Hermosa Beach, which holds about 275. And then the Viper Room, which is just around, 300 there. So are those venues going to be the first to open? And then how are they going to open? Will they actually how are they going to pay the bands coming in? That's one of the things as a promoter I sit here trying to figure out going, it's the old adage, that any musician I'm sure you've ever talked to, any band that plays anywhere, they feel they're worth X amount of dollars and they want this. And of course, every venue goes, well, we tend to disagree and we're going to pay you this. And unless they're an established band and they have a certain contract and that's all there is to it. But the point is, bands can't wait to get back to work and play music in front of crowds. But all these bands just can't go back to work because it is work and work for nothing. So how are these venues going to have the money to pay what they usually do when they do open the doors? What kind of capacity are they going to have? Is it going to be 25%? And then, how deep do you get into that conversation? How are they even going to set up venues? Restaurants are easiest. You stagnate the tables. You could do plexiglass. Restaurants are easy. They've got it made, so to speak. I wouldn't say they get it made, but you at least you understand what I'm saying here. Where venues, I wouldn't even understand how a venue opens its doors unless you're a sit-down venue. And still at that point, it's bad enough when you go to a show and you see everybody lining up trying to get into the show. Imagine it's December, they finally start doing shows and it's rainy and cold and snowing someplace. And you have little markers for every 6 feet that people have to stand going all the way around a block until the doors open. And even when they do open, they have to seat them in these seats, say every third person, and then skip a row. And then you sit there going, this is the little things I think about as a promoter. The venues make their money at the bar. So how is the bar going to be running? How many people are allowed to get up out of their seat and go over to the bar? Will there be bar service that way, or will it be only, server serving? And at the bar, let's face it, whether it's regular bars where people go out to a dive bar to go have a drink after work or whatever, to a bar in a venue where everybody goes to take a break from the show and talk or hope to find that person to maybe make breakfast for in the morning or something like that. How is that whole going to function? I've seen some places talk about they're going to start putting bar seats 6 feet apart. like you can imagine the one guy trying to pick up on the one girl, and he's like shouting across from her.
He's
and
like a megaphone.
So who knows? So we're really in just bizarre, unknown territory here of where some of this is going. I'm sorry, I started talking your ear off there, but
no worries, man.
We're all locked in at home. We have nobody to talk to and see. I'm a music promoter. I'm used to being on stage in front of like 10,000 people talking to a crowd. And my first chance I get to talk to you here, Jay. So I'm a little excited. Sorry.
Well, no, we're going to get to all that. And, you know, that's really the topic of conversation is how is this pandemic affecting the music industry, the club industry, the live performance that I love to go to, that many of my listeners do. Let's back up a little bit real quick. We always start the show the same way, and that is the essence of the podcast. Just like every rock song has a hook that sucks you in, every rock fan has a moment, whether it's an album, a performance, a song, or band, that hooked them on rock and roll. What was it for you?
Oh, for me, the hook for me, it was music. Music hooked me. And there were certain artists back in the day. I tried my hand. I guess I'm fast forwarding a little to go back to your question. I tried my hand back in the 80s being a rock star. I was a singer in a bunch of bands that never amounted to anything. But I always had that in my blood. And as the years went by, I got very fortunate that a lot of the bands that I was around and worked with and knew and became close friends with in the day, the joke is they all made it famous and I did it. But what that allowed for me is years down the line, it gave me an in that nobody else had, especially out here in Southern California. So when I started getting into the so-called promoting business and trying to work with venues to get certain bands in and get people to know that they're there, I could pick up the phone and I could call many of famous bands that weren't doing anything at the time. And like I said, I had that in that nobody had. Now, backing up to what you just said, for me, you know, I was a latchkey kid. I lived, in the Valley in the 70s. My mom worked for the airlines and she was never there. As she always tried her best and did everything fantastic for me. But for me, it was music. And I remember probably one of our first Christmases here in Southern California. And she bought me a little, old record player, one of those horrible mustard yellow, all-in-one little plastic record players where, it looks like a little teeny suitcase traveling case, and the thing comes down and you pull the speaker out, and it was so bad. But that was my first essence and to rock and roll. And what she did is she bought me a bunch of records. And my first selection of albums back then, she got me a Kiss album and like a Paul McCartney album and a Queen album. And that was it. And I started just playing those like crazy. And anytime I could find one of them on the TV channel, it was all over. I remember sending in my little thing to become part of the Kiss Army back then. And then believe it or not, it's funny and comical as it seems, a lot of this music I knew, of course, from my mother growing up, but now it was mine. And my mom was always gone. So that was all I had. Rock and roll was my babysitter. I know that's a funny thing to say, but rock and roll is my babysitter. And then I started getting into, back in that day, I got into all those glam rock bands at the time. And I was so into Sweet and of course, David Bowie. And the next thing you know is I'm that kid dancing in front of the mirror, singing out loud and, trying to imitate all these artists. And who would have known that was also the kind of the little prelude to me one day getting out on stage with a microphone in my hand and at the same time doing what I do now. Anybody will tell you the minute I'm out, I'm getting ready to introduce a band and talk to the crowd and get them pumped up and fired up. It all goes back to those first moments when I put the needle on the record and I heard Kiss and I heard, Queen and that was it. It was like a light bulb went on and I just was like, wow, it hit inside. It wasn't just music to listen to and go gardening or riding my bike. It was like, I feel this. And that was, I guess, there you go. I guess that was my hook. Rock and roll was my babysitter. So there you go. And
Yeah, we kind of had similar upbringings where, I would come home from school, my brother would get home too as well, and my mom and my dad wouldn't get home till like 5:30. So we had about 2.5 hours of just ourselves, and more times than not, we'd have MTV on or be listening to music. And it's very true. Without rock and roll, I don't know, I might have gotten in trouble. I might have been out on this, walking up and down the neighborhood looking for stupid stuff to do. But I was home listening to albums, reading the liner notes, looking at the artwork, absorbing the music. And I think that's why our generation has such a connection to music, because we absorbed it so differently than it is now. I mean, it was an event. I've often tell the story to my son. We didn't buy multiple records when we went to the record store. We maybe bought one. We bought one, maybe two, and that was good for like 2 months. Those records were because it took time to dive into it and know every song. There were no fillers on any of the albums back then. They were all written accordingly and recorded, and they were all good songs, or most of them were. And now you see where people are, click and download. And before you know it, they got like 100 hours worth of music that they just bought that they're going to skip through and not listen to it. Like, maybe they'll listen to it 3 weeks from now after you're done skipping around, because that's one thing I've noticed too, is people skip and skip and skip and skip. There's no, letting it just play, letting it just breathe. And that is a lost art form, the art of listening to music. It's totally different now.
Yeah. Throw in there trying to communicate to some of the younger generation and explain a certain simple term, B-side. Yeah. When you use that and they look at you with a deadpan look in their eye. I say that with some of the bands we get. And of course, my nickname is Mr. 80s. And here you go. I'm going to give for you, Jay, something pretty good that I don't give very often. The history of where I got the moniker Mr. 80s is it's been kind of a secret. In fact, I rarely ever talk about it. Of course, certain people in the music spectrum know about it, but it's kind of a funny story. It goes back to one night many years ago on the Sunset Strip, and we're at the Viper Room. And I happened to be with one of my close friends, Eric Singer from KISS. In fact, happy birthday, Eric. It was Eric's birthday yesterday. So in case he happens to get listening, I owe him that. And Eric was with, of course, one of his good friends, Chad, from the Red Hot Chili Peppers. And we're just having a drink at the bar, hanging out, and he introduces me to Chad. And, Chad was like, hey, I think I've met you before. And Eric kind of turns and goes, of course you've met Julian. Why, he's the king of the 80s. And I laughed, and I just kind of went, whoa, hold on now. No. That's a little too much of a, to give to me right there. I go, I love the honor, but he goes, oh, all right. Well, Chad, it's Mr. 80s. And now, and I think Chad reached over and he goes, Mr. 80s, nice to meet you, Chad. And I'm like, yeah, I know who you are, Chad. And we started bullshitting, whatever. And funny is somebody else came over and Chad, I think, turned around or something and said, hey, do you know Mr. 80s? and it stuck. And Mr. 80s came from that. So you sit there and I'll be talking to bands, and my point was going to be there that, of course, I work mostly with 80s bands. I've worked with tons of bands from the 70s and 90s to current day, but 80s is my specialty. And again, because my personal connection with all of these artists, strongly with rock and roll and strongly with new wave. I'm connected to both of them from back in the day. And you sit there and you talk to some of these kids at shows, and they'll be coming up to me before the show and they'll be asking, hey, what's so-and-so going to be playing this set? Do you have the set list? And I'm like, well, I can't let you know. But I go, it's going to be a pretty special set tonight. They're going to really be breaking out all the B-sides. And that you feel like you just lost the whole conversation. Because they stop and they look at you and they're like, what? And they sit there, and I've had, I don't know how many times, what album was that? It's just like, well, although man, one or two artists did put out an album called The B-Side, know that this was not an album of theirs. The cuts on that really cool hit that kind of also became a hit, but was not as big. That was the flip side of the little EP or
the 45.
The little 45, and don't even go there. Try to explain a 45 to some of the generation. Oh my God, I don't want to feel old, but that'll do it. We've lost. I think you also hit it on the head with talking about clicking the downloads. Albums in our day were so important. They were important. You know what? That's something we're losing. I'm glad you brought that up, because the artist is losing people listening to a lot of their music that didn't happen 2 years ago. We all know, like you said, when you bought that one album, you put it on and you flipped the record over. You didn't just put it on and listen to one track. If you did, you bought a 45. You may at the end of the show have to, explain exactly what a 45 is to some of the listeners. No offense, but that you listen to every track on the album. So it was a big deal, and maybe there were one or two that, wasn't a great song, but you just let it play through. You weren't going to go run over to the album and lift the needle and go put it forward, because God knows how impossible it is to get the perfect start to that song. But those artists, they wrote those songs. Every song that is on any album from the first to currently, an artist wrote that. They were in the studio. Their band was together. Every note, whatever that made that album, that cut. Every little noise you hear, they worked hard for that finished product. And that, I think, in this day and age, we lose so much of that. And it's kind of a sad thing. I feel, you talk about the differences of music before and you talk about music today. I think you brought a really important aspect of music that we have lost. And the B-side, the deep cuts and B-sides, we don't get anymore from new artists, because, they don't need to make a lot of that music, as you said, because they only need to make a few songs that are going to be downloads, and that's what they'll give them. Oof. Yeah,
no, it's the truth. And I think out of all the genres, all genres of music have been affected by the lack of physical connection in music. However, I think rock music, because of its reliance on the album cover and the whole package, the image and everything, has been affected most. And I don't think rock in general has figured out a way to adapt yet. I think when you look at rap and hip hop and pop music, they're all adapting. They're all moving forward with, releasing a single here, and because they don't rely on that album cover, right? No one ever talks about a great album cover in like the pop world. You know what I mean? Like no one ever talks about like it's Number of the Beast by Iron Maiden, or it's Shout at the Devil by Motley Crue, or whatever album back then, Led Zeppelin, Physical Graffiti, or Led Zeppelin 4, like just the mystery of what the album is doing or how it's speaking to whoever bought the album. No one ever talks about the great album cover that Michael Jackson had, or the great album cover that Madonna had. They just don't. So that whole connection with that was never there in pop music, but it was there in rock music. And one of the reasons why, as we segue into, the next part of the conversation, which is present day and the relevancy of rock and roll and how it's being affected with the pandemic, is the fact that it's irrelevant right now. It's a fact, the fact that rock music has trouble gaining an audience, whether it's a performance at the Super Bowl, whether it's the Rock Awards at the Grammys not even being televised, whether it's the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame telling you what's rock and roll, like Biggie Smalls and Whitney Houston. It's almost like it's being forgotten. And I attribute a lot of that to infrastructure and lack thereof. But I do believe prior to this, rock music was gaining a lot of traction. There's a lot of great new bands that are out there that have kind of lost the momentum because of this. And even those bands that were really big in the 80s, we're starting to see a resurgence in their popularity. And I hope that momentum is not lost forever or for a long time, Am I right and correct in saying those things? I mean, you're on the front line. You're promoting the music. You're in the clubs, in the theaters, promoting the concerts. Did you see kind of a gradual swell in popularity with rock music?
I will definitely. I agree with everything you're saying. It's hard for me to disagree and just say, jump in there and say, "Well, hold on, I don't agree with you there," and I would. I have no reason not to. If anything, I'll make more conversation. But I'm a promoter. I'm a concert promoter. Now, for the record, as a concert promoter, anybody out there just has one inkling of not so sure about everything, is I promote shows most of the time that venues hire me to promote. And what that simply in terms means is that, here's a perfect way to put it. As a promoter, I get paid to let people know about a show that they may not have already known about. And that's the simplest terms that I could ever use. That means that there's venues out there, and what they do, of course, is they book an act, whether it's a single artist or a band. A slew of them all come through, and they have their booking agents. And I stress that because I am nonstop inundated by every band in the world that always is getting hold of me. Hey, Julian, can you get my band into this venue? I can put in a good word with the booking agent, but I don't do the booking. That's not up to me. But so I had to do a little plug there because maybe that'll help a few bands out there not submit their music to me. But as a promoter, when the venue puts these bands on their calendar, the next thing is I'm then talked to, whether it's an email or a phone call or a text. Hey, Julian, we just booked so-and-so. Are you available that date? And whether it's 2-3 months down the line or a last minute booking, they had to fill in an empty slot on their schedule. We do what we do. And of course say, yeah, well, let's do this. Send me over the artwork and give me the information. When are tickets going on sale, the ticket links, all the little business end of it. But where I said what I described about what a promoter does, there's also, I hate to say it, but you know what? If rock and roll was doing so great out there for the longest amount of time, I wouldn't have a damn job. And I always hate having to say that. The only reason that I've had a job as a promoter for going, into 3 decades now, for goodness sakes, is because no matter how great the band is, those venues are always needing a few extra tickets sold. Whether it's a whole lot of tickets sold or whether it's just that extra amount that is going to sell it out or they want those extra few people buying the merch and buying the concessions, whatever it is, that's why I have a job. And if every band sold out every tour and every seat in the house, there would be no job for me. That's the simplified thing. So rock and roll has been hurting for a long time. Me with the 80s, all genres of it. It's kind of the pro and the con is, again, now there has been the surge or resurgency, we should say. I definitely agree that things were on the uptick. And by that, I can say that, let me use St. Roch as an example. St. Roch in Hermosa Beach is about a half mile from the beach. It's a beautiful, intimate club. I like to call it intimate for the fact that it's only about a 275, close to 300 seater, and not all seater. There's some VIP seating and booths around, but it's mostly a stand-up general admission show. What makes St. Roch so special is the booking agent does a fabulous job. And what the hell, I'll give him a plug. Adam Spriggs. I've worked with him, luckily, for many years. He books for the Kaboo Festival and the Beach Life Festival out here. So he has the opportunity to get a lot of really great national touring acts that he'll get somehow or another to play St. Roch. Well, that artist may not normally play in a venue that small, but they manage to work out a way, again, I'm out of the business side of things, but manage a way for the ticket cost and, to how many dates, maybe a double date on a super big artist. Somehow they work it out to give you these great national acts, but to see them in a small, intimate setting. which of course is always for fans like you and me and everybody else out there, is really special. So that being said, you have these venues and these artists coming in. And what I started noticing, especially 80s artists, there were big names on the bill that I hadn't seen for a while. And that's because a lot of these artists were dusting off the old outfits and the resurgence was there. Artists that we just hadn't, we hear their songs every day on the radio. We'll hear them on a jingle, from some commercial. But whatever those reasons are, enough people out there, their agent or management company said, hey, we think we can get you a gig or two. And mind you, it's not always easy. A lot of these artists have some very difficult times selling out of even 300-person theaters, but they're out there. And because of that, I totally believe we were going to have a really fantastic 2020 summer and fall. I sat there, the old kiss of death like everybody else. Life could not be getting any better for me, Julian Douglas. I was starting to see my calendar light up. I do a ton of work. This is the exception to the rule, where I do work with a specific band or two. Yachtly Crew. If you've heard the name, I'm sure you have. They've become the nation's hottest yacht rock band. They're based out of here in LA. They went from playing in small clubs to now they were about to start, and they had just gone on 1 or 2 dates, a national tour, an actual national tour doing yacht rock covers. They're hysterical. They dress to the T, and they have an unbelievable following. But I started working for them as this so-called MC host and even play music. And I had a character created, DJ Yacht Rock. That's right, DJ Yacht Rock. And I'm here tonight to host this event, to take care of all you fans of that smooth rock of the 70s and 80s. Yeah, it was pretty corny, but it was hysterical. And bands like that now had the whole summer ahead of them, the whole fall ahead of them. We were all sitting there, and not to veer off the subject, but I am also a big travel speaker at the Travel and Adventure shows, which are 10 conventions across America. And it came all starting from when I started blogging about my life in rock and roll and where my travels led me. I started speaking at those shows and got booked for a bunch of these conventions. And I literally did the jinx. I did the curse. I sat there going, can my life get any better? All these bands I loved that I'm friends with now are all starting to get booked. I've got this calendar of shows for March going into September. And I had 2 conventions I was going to be flying out to Dallas and Philadelphia to speak in front of thousands of people on my travel tips. And then I was just told that I would probably getting up to 10 conventions the following year to get to speak at. And then we all know what happened. And I'm just one of those people it affected. So rock and roll, it was upticking. The nostalgia was there. And I think a lot of it is come from me, I see as a promoter, is I'm seeing a lot of shows out there where I've done some work. Let's use a great funny one, for example, New Kids on the Block. And a show, or even New Kids on the Block did a tour recently. And one of my good, very close friends, Tiffany, was on that tour. And let's use Tiffany as a pure example. Tiffany will be playing venues out here, places like the Whiskey, of course, and other similar venues. And what's happened is we all adore and love Tiffany, and everybody can, once you mention the name now, that song, You're Alone Now, it's going to be stuck in your head all day long. And that's it. I think we're alone now. I did that on purpose. Now, everybody out there on your podcast are going to be singing it all day long. What happens now is all these fans that are like our age-ish that grew up with that song and grew up with Tiffany and the music videos and remember everything about it, go to see her show. But people our age, most of them have kids, and they're bringing their kids to the Tiffany show. Tiffany has this shirt she sells, and it just says, "Children Behave" on the t-shirt, a line from that song. and it's a hit. And you see all these kids for show wearing these T-shirts, "Children Behave," and I think it is the most adorable, cutest thing ever. But that's it. Nostalgia. The parents are still listening to all this music. I talked about Yachtly Crew, and they do their all ages shows, especially they do a lot of, like, say, Santa Barbara, and these outside venues, these bowls and parks and amphitheaters. And you look out and all these kids are dressed in little yachty outfits, got little sailor hats on and little sailor outfits, and the little Wayfarer sunglasses. And you sit there laughing and go, how cute. But you think about it, because the parents, all of us, we're still listening to that same music. We're not letting it go, because that was the time. Those songs have an effect on our life daily. So now the kids hear these songs all day long being played by their parents, and they love this song or that song. And the parents, they want to have their kids experience what they experienced, a concert. Sure, you may not be able to maybe want to bring your kid to some death rock concert, but you can bring them to certain things. Can you bring your kid to a Tiffany concert? Oh, heck yeah. And dance along and do all that. Can you bring your kid to some, like I mentioned, Yachtly Crew, and bring them to all those 70s and 80s, soft rock, Hall & Oates and Steely Dan that we all love? Yeah, of course you can bring your kid and listen and let them sing along to it. Rock and roll was going up on the charts, so to speak. It was coming back. It was making a rise. I had a ton of concerts on my calendar that I had coming, and that meant all these bands were doing it. And then, boom, everything has changed right now.
Yeah.
And what's going to happen with that? Who knows?
Before I begin my next thought, the new Tiffany stuff, which is more of a rock and roll flair, I really like. I think her new stuff is tremendous. But getting to your point,
and I think that. No, I was just going to say, I think Tiffany is a great example. I love that how her and many artists are, and I wish others would do too, is she knows her song and a couple of other songs are what bring the people to the shows. But she is not stopping. She is always creating new music. She'll give her stuff, like right now, like you said, her new stuff is definitely rock and roll. And her voice is as great now as it ever was. So she's able to reinvent herself, kind of, if you want to call it, keep with the times. The times are different. You hate to say it, but you don't see Tiffany having a number one hit on the radio out there, and not because of talent. That's not for sure. It's just music has changed.
Right.
So,
right.
But can Tiffany produce a good or, a great quality album? And can it be something that people listen to all the time? Yes, that's what she's doing. But more importantly, what that enables her to do is to stay current on a touring circuit, to be out there all the time. And sure, she plays a lot of those new songs, and they're great. And people all of a sudden listen and go, oh, I never would have known. This is a cool song. I'm into this. And then when she plays the big hit and the other couple hits, they freak out. But she's able to sell her new music, and she's keeping current. And yes, there are so many artists like that. And that's what those artists need to do. Some of them, I feel bad, because as a promoter, they haven't tried to record anything new in decades. And of course, that's difficult. Of course, it's difficult, because it's the catch-22, as I started saying about the artist playing in concert. As a fan of music, we all do the same thing. What do you cringe at more than anything? When that singer is up there and he goes, all right, here, I'm going to play my new song. And we all cringe, because no matter how great it is,
right?
We, in general, we came to the show because all we want to do is hear the old hits.
Well, right. That's more indicative of the audience, though, because as I've found over the last decade, there's almost like an absolute refusal from rock fans to listen to anything new, not just new bands, but new material from anyone. Whether it's, a new Robert Plant album, whether it's a new, whoever it is. And very few fan bases look for or want to dive into a new record by a band they love, and I don't know why. I don't know why people all of a sudden, because rock fans in general love new music. We grew up on buying every album we could buy, and then all of a sudden, we want to just listen to that classic rock station on the radio that plays the same 50 songs over and over again.
Yeah, you've really hit something right there, haven't you? How do we change? How do we change the mentality of the fan?
Yeah.
How do we get them to, like you said, turn off if you're listening to Sirius XM, and turn off 70s on 7 and turn off the 80s on 8, turn off First Wave and Boneyard? How do you get people to turn those off and turn on, a local station of new music? It's difficult. And it's just as difficult, as you said, as the fan of the music to, you're not running to the store or running to jump online the minute, I hate saying it, like say a Bon Jovi puts out a brand new album. Because, here's an example. My wife and I wear a lot of hats. And one of them, which is kind of a funny one, is I'm a judge for the Bloody Mary festivals. I actually go around the nation, and I am a judge at the Bloody Mary festival. It sounds hysterical, but it's something I love, something I enjoy, and once again gives me the opportunity to travel. And one of my trips not too long ago, I was judging, I think the year before last, the New Orleans Bloody Mary Fest. And, what a town to fly out to and spend a few extra days and, do everything. Because to me, other than Los Angeles and the Sunset Strip, to me, there's no other town in all of America that oozes music like New Orleans does. And so I get a really great chance to listen to music I would never get to see live out here that I can only there, because of the styles of music, from true jazz and true blues to Zydeco and all this other type of rock. You just don't get that anywhere else. And so I was out there judging the Bloody Mary Fest. And I, of course, on all my social media, I'm Mr. King of social media, having to do everything I do. And I got a call. I started exchanging messages from one of my friends that happens to be in Bon Jovi. And they made the comment going, are you here in New Orleans? I'm like, yeah. And they're like, well, we're in New Orleans. What are you doing tomorrow night? You want to come to the show? And of course, the wife was all like, yeah, we do. And I'm like, yeah, sure, why not? And sure enough, next day, text the guys. They were like, yeah, everything. We'll send our manager out to meet you. We got you all set up and taken care of, got all the passes and the whatnots, and in we went. I got to take pictures up on stage and with all the guys, and, good seeing everybody. It was really cool to do something like that outside of LA. But the really funny part was, and this was the point of this little story, is Bon Jovi comes up, takes stage, starts with some kick-ass tune, and I kid you not, probably the next 10 songs I had never heard. And we're not talking like one or two. We're talking like 10 songs in a row I had never heard. And we were a good solid hour something in. My wife loves Bon Jovi, and bless her heart. But, I would look at her and she'd look at me like, I don't even know that one. Like she gets the recent Bon Jovi albums when they come out. She runs a lot. So, she puts on those little headsets and goes running, gives her a chance to listen to more than maybe I would at times. And she was looking at me going, I don't know this one. Some of them she was going, oh yeah, you're not going to know this one. It's, his last album or something like that, a deep cut, and I couldn't believe, and you kind of saw the crowd. They were getting antsy. It was sad. The music was great. It wasn't like Bon Jovi went up there and was singing out of tune and playing crappy songs. Oh, hell no. He was playing some really cool, and every song it was like, wow, cool song. I'm going to have to check that out. But it was funny how the crowd got antsy, and you just didn't know the music. I don't know how we changed that. And maybe it's just the artist doing what Bon Jovi did. Maybe, he did it. He got to play all those songs and everybody loved it, and him talking about what album it's on, that maybe a lot of those fans went right on out and downloaded those songs. And maybe that's what it took, was for him to do that. But in general, New artists are a little different because that's just it. They're new artists. It is hard for them to break through, and you've got to have a hell of a song to get it out on radio play on the so-called top radio stations out here. Because still, even the top radio stations, that if they're a rock station, they're more or less just, as you said, continuing to play all those same 50 classic rock songs. And unfortunately, it's because if we're sitting in traffic and we're stuck bumper to bumper and we've had a lousy day and we just can't wait to get home, a lot of people flip on the radio and they want to sing along with the song. They want that. And you talked about this before, about that certain hook, that thing that takes you back. Well, that's what the music of our genre is, whether it is rock and roll, whether it's new wave, whatever it is. If you're into the pop and dance of that time, those songs all take us back, and they usually take us back to a really wonderful, happy place in our life. We all know that you can sit there and rattle off a ton of songs or a ton of artists and start remembering certain times of your life and what you were doing and what was going on at that. I mean, for me personally, I was a big new wave brat in the early 80s. I was a total rocker, but then I got hooked into all the new wave. And MTV, let's face it, it did it. MTV, like you said, it kept us out of trouble. We were there that first day, that first video when MTV aired. We raced home, got on our bikes, and I was in high school then, and we all sat around the TV waiting for that first thing and seeing that spaceship start going up, and the MTV jingle for hearing it for the first time was mind blowing. And that's it. We were addicted. And of course, there were more. MTV was loaded up with the new wave bands. They were. That was it. New wave was just that. It was a new wave. It was a new wave of music. It was a new wave of look. And for that, MTV loved playing their videos. And I got sucked into it. But I live here in Southern California, and we're stuck. Just like everybody else, we're all at home trying to stay safe and be well. And certain songs, my wife and I will go take a little safe walk around the neighborhood here. Yeah, we still can't walk down on the beach, but we can walk around the neighborhood and see the ocean in the distance. And whatever song that comes on, whatever that 80s song, it may be just whatever. I'm just throwing one out there. Maybe, a song by ABC that pops up. And I happen to do a lot of work with them, and I'll sit there and go, God, wow, when Poison Arrow came out, I remember us all at my friend's backyard in high school, and the MTV said, "Now we've got a new one by the band ABC," and I can remember that, and whatever else it is, and all those other bands, it takes us back.
Well, a lot of bands though that we've talked about that are experiencing a resurgence, or the new rock bands that are coming out, whether it's a Dirty Honey, whether it's the Struts, whether it's Goodbye June, all these bands are experiencing some success because they're new and a younger audience is gravitating towards them. But they rely on a lot of the small clubs, and they rely on a lot of the mid-level theaters to play. Because of this pandemic, where do you see the future of these clubs, these mid-level theaters, and where do you see the newer artists, the new bands, the bands that are there for the nostalgia or they're having a resurgence? Where do you see them going and playing once this is over? What's the impact of this pandemic going to have in terms of a short-term effect and a long-term effect?
I think in the short-term effect, there's the unknown is what is scary. I started off your show talking about exactly not knowing here, especially in Los Angeles and California, and Los Angeles even more. And I say that because, the mayor here has put down a lot of stringent laws. And if the guidelines that they're giving now hold true, no music until 2021, that's scary for the local artists. So more the local artists than the lower tier rock bands that are out there, whether it's rock or new wave. I kind of put them all together in the rock world. The new artists had the ability to go out on a regular basis and play the dive bar, the small club as they grew to the scene to improve their fan base, to connect with an audience, because that's just it. Look, these days I get it. Some of these bands are trying to do their best and bless their heart, and they're doing little podcasts of them playing, or they're doing a Facebook Live or Instagram Live and doing these tiny live little acoustic things from their living room and stuff. And that's great, because everything that they do, they should be doing. Because if you're not doing anything, you're going to really fall behind. But no matter how much they're doing, having a few people type on the screen when you're doing a Facebook Live saying, "Hey, Joe in Kansas, I'm listening, you rock," is a lot different from the real feedback you get when you're in a crowd on stage. When you play a note and when you sing a certain line of a song and you connect visually, when you have that eye contact and the clapping and the noise and the screaming, you feel the physical energy, the air coming at you. I say it like I do as being a promoter. I get to host most of my shows. So when I take the stage and I'm the first person that people see and that curtains opens, the excitement is there because it's about to start. And then I get to work up the crowd, whatever it is that I say, to just get them fired up and introduce that artist. Bam, it's there. It's that one-on-one, but one on 1,000 out there, that connection that you're having. And musicians are losing that right now, because no matter what creativity they're trying to do, they don't have a live audience to give them true feedback. If you're doing a Facebook Live and it shows you got 138 viewers and then a little later 142 or 127, why? Did they have to go to the bathroom and come back? Did they have to go run up to the store? Did they just not enjoy it? And all of a sudden that act that they saw on stage with all that energy just isn't as entertaining when they're sitting in front of it with an acoustic guitar and sitting on a stool in front of their, iPad, the future is a little scary. And I started talking before, the venue and the lack of venues is what could be very scary in the near future and kind of the long future here. Luckily, I saw something on Facebook yesterday. I talked about that, the Club St. Rock. They posted something. I can't tell you. I wish I could remember right now. There was a brand new organization, and I'll have to text you after the show or something, because maybe this is something you get to talk to some of your guests about. And again, I wish I had that handy. Maybe as I'm talking to you, I'll try to pull it up on my phone. But there is an organization that has just been created that small mom and pop venues are a part of. And they are using this organization as a real political tool to engage with the local politicians to help save their clubs. Special loans, those small business loans that were all out there in the first 24 hours and then all dried up and disappeared, they are coming together. And if I recall, I saw something that there was already something like possibly 1,600 venues already that jumped on board with this organization. And that, my eyes lit up when I saw that. They mentioned the Troubadour was one of them. And there was a lot of news articles going around about the Troubadour was in the news because they admitted that if this goes on for more than 3 months, they're done. That's it. There will no longer be a Troubadour, a place that has history from the 60s and 70s of some of the greatest bands ever that played that place, let alone the 80s, and currently. Because the new artists that are out there, these are the clubs that they get the opportunity to play. But, it's one thing for a club to shut its doors for a few months. Shutting their doors for 6 to 8 to 9 to possibly a year, let's you do the math. Unless you are a House of Blues, unless you have a parent company like Live Nation, that's just a major beast. Can you absorb that kind of financial hit? A lot of these clubs out there that we're mentioning, a lot of them, they handle, say, like their property taxes. And a lot of that type of stuff is paid for at the beginning of the year. They pay all that out at the beginning of the year. And then as the year goes on, they recoup all those costs. So usually venues are known around January to kind of almost go broke, to to shoot their load. They are putting all their money that they've made, and they're taking care of all their financial commitments for the year to an extent. Then, February and March is rolling, and all that income is coming back to the club, and they start getting out of it, from the red into the black. But now, guess what? Like I just said, there's no music, there's no bodies in these venues. So a lot of these bands, when the everything was going on in January, was like kind of normal. They did that. They did all their obligations and planned for the future, and then all of a sudden the doors shut, and they didn't have any time to get their money back for everything that they put out. So, unfortunately, I find it hard to believe if there's going to be venues out there that don't close the doors, and some of them may be very historic venues. We're going to lose memory, but we're going to lose places for small bands to play locally that are just starting to get their followers, starting to get that start. You can be social media savvy and be the kings of social media, but if you don't have a place for your fans to come and see you in person, to talk to after the show, to hug, social distancing.
If you can't move merchandise either, you can't move the T-shirts, you can't move the stickers.
Right. What is merch? You just said that. What is merch? You know that merch is 100% the band. That is their money. That's their bread and butter. They get their gig, and whatever money they made usually is divided between each band member, and sometimes by the time everything's done, and gas and food and what they're doing, they're not making that much money at all. Sometimes they're losing money. But merch is so important. We always say that. I'm a promoter. It's one of the things, I'm on the microphone all the time telling people, reminding that the band that you're seeing, whoever that band is, I mentioned, hey, before they take the stage, I mentioned they've got their merch out there, and after, and especially if their last song is played and they're all cheering and screaming and hollering, and they announce that they're going to do a short little meet and greet over by their merch, please pick something up and support the band. If you had fun at this show tonight, then more importantly, keep that support going. And that's just it. Think of all that money out there, from their CDs to their freaking cup holders to their T-shirts. All that stuff is not being sold. Think about all the bands, like you just said, that spent their own money getting all that stuff printed and made, that's sitting in boxes right now in their garage.
What do you think the likelihood is of, percentage-wise, if you want to do it that way, these new bands that are coming out, and not just local to LA or local to Nashville or wherever? There's bands that have just released EPs and working on new albums that are nationwide. There's bands in the UK. There's bands all over that are putting out some really great music, some new bands. What percentage do you think are not going to be able to survive this? Meaning, they're paying their bills on their credit cards. They're, got to pick up another line of work because they got to pay their rent and they got to pay their bills or pay their utilities. And then when things do start to open up, small clubs are going to close. So there's going to be less and less places for new bands to play or bands that are experiencing a resurgence. Where do you think that's going to go? I mean, what do you think is going to happen to some of these bands that are just going to say, we can't afford to do this anymore? We're so far in debt, all of us, because we didn't have jobs, because we were musicians and we were relying on doing a tour and selling our merchandise and selling our albums and stuff. And yeah, we're selling a little bit online, but nothing like we were before. We don't have the money to go from Boston to Chicago, and Chicago to LA, and LA to Vegas, and Vegas to Texas, down to Florida, and back up to Boston. We don't have, the back end to do it.
I'm afraid it's going to be a percentage that people might find crazy, but for me personally, I'm going to say I would, as far as new artists go, I would not doubt 20, 25% of those artists out there are done. If not more. You just got done talking about giving a whole bunch of reasons, and those are viable reasons. It's one thing to be the garage band that you're living in your mom's basement and you guys have the chance to sit there and rehearse all the time. And maybe this is just a 6 or 9 month break until you get back doing it again. But the ones out there that were really doing this, and the ones that were footing their own bill for their little tours, the guys that were in, that they put their money together and they got themselves a van, and they're like you just said, going from town to town, playing little bars and clubs, and trying to get people to buy a T-shirt and getting their music out there, and then posting all over social media, and that's a very hard daily grind that takes place. It's been done since the 60s, and it's never going to stop. It's the only way it can be done. That said, I think there's too much of a high percentage of people that will not have the ability to do that anymore. How many people have actually gotten the PUA, the Pandemic Unemployment Assistance, the unemployment for gig workers? Not everybody has gotten that, and there's only limited funds available. Unemployment itself is a certain cap on that. So there's people out there that might be going, okay, hey, this ain't so bad. Maybe we do some Zoom rehearsals and we're just not having our crowd, and I got some money coming in on unemployment. I'm there. Unemployment is not something you get paid for 2 years. Unemployment is a specific amount, and then it dries up. This pandemic assistance that we've gotten right now, they're only saying till July, and then that's gone. Well, that may work for a lot of those people out there that work as far as bartenders and restaurant peers and what have you. But for the musician, the gig worker, that doesn't do it for us. We're screwed. Come at the end of July, what are we going to do? So a lot of those people in local bands and a lot of established bands, and I won't even name any names because I'm going to randomly say a name and they may hear this and go, wait a minute, I'm not, a painter during the day. I'm not a babysitter. I'm not a line cook, so I don't want to mention names, but so many rock and new wave bands that do the circuit. Of course, a lot of them have other jobs. And they've got small jobs that allow them, when they get these small gigs, to do their music still and have people come out. But now, what jobs have been available? Many jobs have been lost. Sure, there are a few, that great word we all love to hear, essential workers. But there's by far, how many millions of Americans had to file for unemployment? 20 plus or something. I don't know the exact amount, but those people are slowly, as businesses and America reopens, are going to be able to go back to work. But how much time went by? So each band has average 4 guys in the band. And I say guys, 4 people, whether it's women or men, it doesn't matter. The point being that there's an average of 4, 3, 4, 5, maybe 6 in the band. But if just one of those people in that band, has said, hey, guys, I was out of work for 3 months before I got my first whatever check. And now I've got a lead on a job. There's a warehouse next, right by me. And crazy it may seem, they've got orders flying out the doors, and I can pick up a gig making $25, $30 an hour to freaking just load trucks up with boxes. I got rent. I'm 2 months behind on rent. My credit cards are all of us these days. What are we doing? We're putting stuff on our credit cards. Well, guess what? Now those bills are going to start coming in, and they need to be paid. Families need food on the table. So you know what? There's going to be a lot of bands out there, new bands, more importantly, and a lot of older bands that just say, you know what? We're probably, why don't we wait a while? Why don't we see what happens out there? I hate saying it too, but how many bands have got, I'll say healthy ego, but they say they're desperate that they want to be back out there playing for people again, that they want to so bad. But how many are sitting there going, well, I don't go to Costco right now because there's too many people and it scares the shit out of me. How many want to actually all of a sudden jump right out there and be in front of, a few hundred people out in the crowd and then do a meet and greet after? And the meet and greet merch is where all of them make their money. How many are going to be out on stage and just somebody had a vapor thing and blew one in the crowd, and the person next to them started coughing because they blew smoke in their space. And then the person on stage didn't see that, but they see the fan right in front of them start coughing. They're probably going to have a freaking attack on stage, panicking, or start playing on the other side of the stage. They're going to have things in their head. Oh crap! If I come back too soon, are we doing this? Is this safe to be doing? There's going to be so many new ideas, and I think many are going to maybe just wait. As many are out there posting on social media, we can't wait to get out there and play for you. Day number 1, we are playing. But will they? Will they be able to? Will they have bills they have to pay first? Will they kind of say, let's just wait a while? Why don't we wait a couple months and see how these venues are going to operate? We don't want to be the first band to go in there and play when they're sitting there doing thermal tests of people walking in the door, or some crazy certificate you have to show that you're corona free or something like that. And we won't be able to. We're going to have to play on stage, but even though it's a small stage, we're going to have to stand 6 feet apart from each other when we play. And
I think those thermal tests are. I think those are going to be a reality. I think when you walk into a venue, you're going to have your temperature taken. You're going to have to, if you have the antibodies in your system, meaning you've already had it, you're going to have to produce proof of that. There's going to be maybe like an ID card. I think that stuff, the longer this goes and the inability to not have a cure, a vaccine, or a treatment, I think that is almost essential if we want to have those things. Imagine, going on public transportation in New York or Chicago on the L or the subway, touching the bar in the middle of the subway car that 100 people have touched previous to you. Who knows how clean they are? Who knows if, the hand wash, there's going to be, the sanitizer stuff all over. I think all that stuff's going to happen. I think that's just without question, because like you said, there has to be a confidence in the person going to the show. I know myself, I don't want to go sit in a 3,500 general admission theater like the Aragon Ballroom in Chicago, people right on top of each other coughing and sneezing, and guy 3 people down having a fever, and then that guy gets it, then I get it, and then the person next to me gets it. I almost think it's going to have to be that way. There's no option. If these clubs are going to open up, and that's the other question too, are the clubs going to have to pay for this type of testing, or is this going to be just part of regulation? There's going to be a department within the local government that goes out to these sporting events or concerts and sits outside the hall or sits outside the stadium and just tests people before they go in. It's like a security checkpoint. Now you got to get your fever checked. You got to get all your vitals checked or whatever before you go into a show.
I can't agree more. Why you were saying that, I happened to look up real quick, just for the record. The National Independent Venue Association, the NIVA, the National Independent Venue Association, that is the brand new organization that I had talked about with smaller clubs, independent clubs, that have gotten together to have a voice, a powerful voice. And that being said, I agree that, again, I'm not working for any of these venues. I would assume if we're just having a casual conversation here for listeners to listen to, then they're the expert. It's their clubs. You would hope that they are talking about what we're talking about, and I can't see how they couldn't be. But I would hope if they have now an organization that has organizational heads, top representatives that are probably trying to get things moving faster so that clubs can open up. But the give and take, as you said, like restaurants right now, they are doing everything in their power to show their patrons that they are a safe environment for you to eat, whether it's dining out, with takeout or delivery, showing pictures of, how beautiful and clean their restaurant is and how it will be that way for when the doors open, to their kitchens and what their staff are wearing, how they prepare the food and how that food is getting delivered to you. That is everything right now. And the restaurants out there that are going out of their way to show pictures on social media of these great things and great ways they're doing this are the ones that are very much so succeeding, and that will help them to when the doors open. So that being said, that should be the model that an organization like this should be discussing with all of these independent clubs out there. They should be also saying, you brought up a fabulous point, who's going to pay for all this? All these clubs right now are broke. So opening their doors is not going to be easy. Placing orders for if they have food, or, now that everything they had to be thrown out for certain beverages that they're going to need and alcohol, to stock their club, to open their doors once again and get that club clean, but keep the place completely safe for their patrons. All those clubs out there, that's a lot of cost for all the cleaning products that need to be done. I've seen something where some places, restaurants and whatnot, they've got little disposable face masks at the door. They've got a box of gloves at the door. They have their big tub of sanitizer at the door. Maybe that's, like you said, what needs to take place. And they're going to have the little thermal temperature takers. When will there be an antibody card that might even help the process more? But this is an extra expense that these places don't have right now. So how do they do that? Maybe that's something that this organization can do to help the venues, which in turn is only going to do one thing, and that's going to help us, the fans of music, come and feel safe and secure. You talked about you yourself, just a fan of music, not wanting to go to places. Look at it on my side. I unfortunately am in what they call that high risk group. I had some situations this past year. My lungs are performing at 50%. And my doctor has me on strict orders to be careful out there, so to speak. I'm reminded every day about that and how I have to be careful. So you don't think I'm missing the rush of having 1,000 people in front of me when I take that mic, and when I get off stage, taking pictures with everybody, hugging them, high-fiving them right in front of their face? I live for that. I lived for it from when I started in the 80s to every day since the last show I did. But is it safe for me to go back to work tomorrow? No. I know that right now. If the doors open and they were like one of these places, like whether it's a hair salon in Texas or some of these other places, although, again, they're doing it safe, but even a place defined, and we're seeing that everywhere around America, certain businesses are saying, screw you, we're going to open our doors. And they may do it as safe as can be. But if my venue, one of my venues that I do a lot of work at, said, hey, Julian, we don't care anymore. We're rock and roll. We're fighting society. We're going to be rebels. We got tons of bands that want to play. We're going to open our doors. We'll do it for like 50% of the size of the space, but we're going to do it. So we've got some shows we want you on. Am I next weekend going to go walk into a club with 120 people, even instead of 300 or something like that, and, do what my job is? Not right now. I can't do that. Sure, businesses are reopening right now. Certain things are changing, but the virus hasn't changed. The threat is exactly today as it was 3 months ago. The threat has not changed. So the venue and the fan of the music, we need security to know that we can go back and watch music, and the artists that are performing the music, they have to have the sense of security. They have to be able to get in their vans or their tour buses or their private jets, no matter what, how big or small the bands are, and they have to be secure that they and everybody that works for them, all of the guys doing tech, all the guys doing their sound, their lighting and selling stuff, their sound people, at the sound booth, all, their guitar techs and drum techs and all that endless stuff. Those people also need to be safe. They're putting themselves at more danger being out in the crowd. So it's a thought that we have to address, and who's going to help make this happen? Everybody needs to come together, but somebody at a bigger sense needs to help get these doors open and not just the venue.
Well, you mentioned an interesting point. The virus itself is not relenting. It's not going away until there's a treatment or until there's a vaccine. So it's here. So how do we deal with it? And then there's the pyramid of what I call reality, which is at the top is the band or the club owner. Then below that, you've got the band members and you've got the employees. And then below, the band, then you've got all their support staff, like you mentioned, the guitar techs, the roadies, the light guys. How many of those guys are not coming back? Those guys are
right
at the low end of the totem pole because they get paid peanuts. And, they had to pick up another line of work. So are they going to go out and tour with a band and make, $100 a night or whatever it is that they make? Or are they going to go make, like you said, $20-25 an hour to work in a warehouse because it's needed, or the employment or this warehouse needs employees and they're paying top dollar? And then same thing with the club, right? Are you going to have people that work at the club, whether it's a bartender, whether it's a waitress, whether it's a security guy, whether it's the ticket guy, putting the armband around your wrist or checking the marker on your hand? Are those guys going to feel comfortable doing what they do? I mean, how hard is it going to be to find those guys? But then let's dive deeper. Let's say that place serves food. Well, how many places that are their food vendors are going to go out of business because of this? Okay. Man, how many alcohol distributors? Usually alcohol does great during a downturn, but nevertheless, it's a possibility. Same thing with food vendors. And now that there's less food vendors, the supply and demand is different. So now what you were paying before, now it's more money because now there's more of a risk for these guys to come out to your club. And now you've got to pass that cost on to the employer. So that $10 beer now becomes an $18 beer. That $15 burger now becomes a $25 burger. So then now who's going to have the money after just collecting unemployment for several months and go to a show? And then on top of that, the club is at half capacity because they have to have, due to regulation, either half capacity or 25%, 30%, whatever. So now they're making less money. So now they got to think of creative ways to make that money up. The band's got to think of creative ways to make the money up on merchandise. So it's a clusterfuck. I hate to use that term, but I don't know.
No,
I don't know.
You did.
Yeah.
And think of the circle. Think of the circle as you just were saying that, and you get into it, and then one of the biggest factors involved there is the price of the band.
Yeah.
Because let's just take a low price. Just for a round figure, $1,000. Some band gets paid $1,000 to play one night of the week, and that's what they split between themselves. And you just touched upon it. The venues, when they start opening their doors, there's not one venue out there, even a House of Blues, that is going to be, in the black. They're going to be in the red, and they are going to sit there when they're ready to start building a calendar of bands again. The problem is everything that you said. Everything is going to be cost efficient. It's the only way to operate. So when that band first, they pick up the phone and they say, "Oh yeah, of course, yeah, we're ready. Let's do this. We're available on this Saturday night." Okay, and then you think the booking agent is going to turn around and say, "Yeah, we've got you for that $1,000." No, that's not happening. None of these bands are on March, whatever the date was. The last shows were done. Whatever that band made, although they assume that's what they're getting when they go right back out on the road, it's not happening. And it can't happen. A venue can't pay a band $1,000 they paid at the end of February. That can't happen at that price. They're going to have to sit there and say, "Look, unfortunately, we're only going to be able to pay you guys $500." And then it goes right back to what you were saying again. The people involved with the band. Think about the roadies. I hate saying it, but we all know it's the oldest joke in the book. Most of those people will work for a ham sandwich. So now the guy that was making $50 or $75 a gig just because he was happy doing something with a band, now you just said it. That guy's got a job. Maybe he's working over at Costco now. Maybe he's making $25 an hour stock the shelves.
And he's got insurance.
So, yeah, and he's got insurance. His family is protected. He's making more than he ever made before, and he's got something solid because guess what? That job ain't going anywhere. He's got job security. He got in there. All these markets that started hiring all these people because they needed people, they're going to still need them for a long time. So why would he give up his insurance that he's got now to cover his kids, that he didn't have, that's not coming out of his own pocket, and he's got this steady, nice paycheck, and give that all up to make a couple, just to make a little money, just so that they can go out and do more grunt work again? A lot of them are going to say, maybe not now. Check back with me in 6 months. We'll see what happens. So that's why I think you really, really hit something a lot of the average people don't quite take the time to think about. And that's going to have a huge effect. And a lot of these bands, like I just said, if the band got $1,000, we're just using a crazy number out there. But we know some of these are new bands trying to make it. They ain't getting no $1,000. But they were finally getting to a point, remember, when that band finally were getting paid and not getting nothing. But now all of a sudden they're going to have to restart because the only way they play is either play for free or God forbid, are we going to see a resurgence of pay to play? Is that going to make a comeback? God, I hope not. But the old 80s pay to play for these bands, are venues going to say that? Are they going to say, you know what, we want you to play, but we're going to need a guarantee on your end. If you don't bring in this amount of people, since we can only hold this amount of people, we have to have something in the contract. So there's some scary times coming ahead also that people need to start discussing.
And then with the band that is making that $1,000, let's just say you got to knock off 50% of that because the club is at half capacity. Do they say to themselves, we're not going to take it till we get our number? And then they sit around waiting because no one's booking them because they cost too much right now? Or the other option, let's just forget it. Let's just disband. I know we had that great EP that everybody loved and everybody said we were on the, we were heading towards greatness, but I'm not going to go and play for $500 a night and have to play 5-6 gigs a week just to, make some money. And then who knows if we're going to sell any merch? Because that's the other thing, too. People may have money to go to the show, but they may not have the money to buy a shirt because of
exactly
the disposable income is gone. That extra money that people had to buy, now if they're spending more money on beer, that's going to cut into their T-shirt money. So it's just...
All right. I'm going to make a really bad joke here. And just remember that I said this first on your show. I've got the solution with a lot of bands out there. So all bands, if you're out there, and if it ever does amount to anything, it all comes back as evidence. The first time it was brought up was here on your show, and it was brought up by me. What bands should do right now when it's time to get out touring and they want like sponsorship and all of that, I think every band out there should be writing to every freaking toilet paper company out there. Email freaking the Charmin and Cottonelle and all the others and start thinking that, hey, if you come to our show, you get a free roll of toilet paper. What is the incentive to get the person out there to that show? Maybe, hey, you know what? Like we're saying, maybe some band is smart enough to get the disposable cheap face mask or fabric, and they start making, face masks. And for everybody that comes to their show, you get a complimentary face mask. If you're scared being at home, don't be. Come to our show, and we're providing you with our face mask.
But
I mentioned, that's kind of a funny joke, but Yachtly Crew. I mentioned Yachtly Crew made face masks, and they put them online last week, and they sold out in something like 10 minutes online. Thousands of them. Their fans just, and now I see people tagging on social media because they'll repost them, and you see, I pop on and see Yachtly Crew's story, and there's somebody at the freaking market and, representing Yachtly Crew, and there's a Yachtly Crew mask. Pretty freaking smart idea. We kind of backtracked a little about ideas. What can bands do? Well, maybe there's a combination where you start thinking outside the box.
Well, that's what I was just going to say.
Yeah,
I was just going to say the sponsorship thing. Although the toilet paper is funny, but maybe we start seeing Budweiser or Miller being the exclusive for the club, and they pay the band fee, provided that they only sell Miller products or provided they only sell Budweiser products. Maybe that's what we start to see now. We start to see clubs align with a beer company, or clubs align with whatever, Subway sandwiches or McDonald's or Burger King, whoever wants to sponsor. They're helping the club offset some of those costs. But then there's this incentive, for them, predominantly liquor companies, I would imagine, would probably be the first one to jump all over this. So, you can't.
I think it's brilliant.
Yeah, you can't sell any Bud products in this. You can only sell Miller, and here's what you can sell at this price. And if you sell, you got to sell this certain amount, and then we'll pay the $1,000 that the band wants, or we'll pay, this, that, or the other. And I think that even happens right now with some bigger venues. I know some bands, when they're playing arenas or they're playing stadiums, they get a percentage of the beer sales, but that could work at a club level, at a mid-level theater level as well, to help, because you got to get creative now. So how do you get creative? You find someone to pay for it. Let's say, instead of, Jam Productions, presents this, maybe it's, the local, Firestone down the street from the Troubadour or wherever.
No, I love it. I love it. And you know what? I think if I could do a public service announcement, like I was joking about, like toilet paper, I think that would be it. I for many years I had the opportunity, and it's been a while since I've done it. I've gotten to speak at MIT, the Musicians Institute in Hollywood. And I got to speak a lot about a lot of different topics, but mostly about marketing. Because they wanted me to talk to a lot of these bands as they were so-called graduating from MIT to get that last bit of advice. And the most important sometimes is, you've said, is merch and how important that is. And I would always use some certain people out there. Of course, Gene Simmons, you cannot ever discuss the power of merchandising without thinking about Kiss. You can love Kiss, you can hate Kiss. But you know what? There is no other band that's ever been and ever will be as successful of selling merchandise as it comes to Kiss. So that being said, my personal advice for every musician out there, you just touched upon it. I think it's important. I would recommend that a lot of these bands that know that they've got something start contacting different, alcohol companies and start working out what you can. Like me, for example, I happen to be really good friends. A friend of mine, GC, he owns Hollywood Vodka. And Hollywood Vodka is in the Viper Room and a lot of those really great hip venues, of course, up in Hollywood. It happens to be a real super high-end vodka. I love it, and I drink it myself, and I'm not doing this as a plug in any way, but they are a small, locally owned company that they are not in stores. They're not in a grocery store. You can't just go to your local grocery store and stock up on Hollywood Vodka. You're not going to be able to do it. They distributed solely to all these great venues and clubs. Well, that company right now, they're sitting there going, when the shit is this stuff going to reopen? Because we can't unload all these cases in our warehouse until music is back, until certain bars are back. So you just started talking about, the beers, the old days of the 80s. The 80s were all about the Budweiser bikini contest and the Bud Girls. You think about all these companies out there. Well, I mentioned Hollywood Vodka. How many different companies, hard alcohol, beers, wine, and now all the different mixings from the hard ciders and the spritzers and sodas and even, alcohol water. There are an endless amount of companies out there. I personally right now would tell every band out there, maybe it's time you start contacting all of them and just find out a really great opening, who you are, what you're doing. You can't wait for this to all come back. And when it does, we should talk about going in business together. We want to push your product at our shows. We want to work with that venue to exclusively do that. Remember, come on, one of my sponsors way back in the day, I used to have one of the biggest 80s nights up at Universal City Walk for 5 years, totally way back Wednesdays. And my sponsor was Jägermeister. Everybody even joked. I could not go. I used to host a lot of shows and still do down at the NAMM convention. Talk about jumping ahead for a whole nother subject. How is this going to hamper NAMM coming around? But at the NAMM convention, I would host shows everywhere. And there was not a time when I got off stage that somebody didn't have a shot of Jaeger waiting for me. Even when I stopped drinking Jaeger for a while, they still always had a shot because they always remember Julian. Hey, there's Mr. 80s, Jägermeister. I was synonymous because Jaeger was my sponsor. So this may be the time. If these bands, you guys are out there, hey, this is Julian here, your friend, and my friendly advice to each one of you, while you've got time at home, that's the thing to do. And it doesn't also have to just be liquor companies, beer and wine and liquor. Think about any other company out there that has something that you can tag to your band. And why don't you get out there and start communicating? Maybe it's a clothing company. Again, here we go. You and I have seen it over the decades, how many different bands have had some type of sponsor and it's some type of clothing. Look at all the ones, even like Monster Energy drinks, all the energy drinks out there. What about the sunglasses? I think I just talked about Yachtly Crew. I think one of their sponsors is I think Revo sunglasses. I hope I'm right, but they have a thing with Revo. So all these bands out there, think outside the box. Maybe you don't always have to worry about going to NAMM and trying to get Fender or Yamaha or whoever it is as a sponsor for you. Maybe you can right now start using the time you have on your hands and have every band member start reaching out to any company out there. So when you are back, you've got somebody behind that has your back.
That's why
and now you can start making money.
Yeah, that's why YouTube subscriptions are important. That's why Facebook followers and likes are important. That's why Twitter followers are important, because you can go to these companies and you can say 50,000 people follow us on YouTube. We've got 60,000 followers on Facebook. We've got 30,000 on YouTube. So this is why all that stuff's important, because the more you can show someone who might be a potential sponsor that you do have a following, and this is a wise investment for them. I mean, no one's going to look at you if you don't have the social media numbers that you need to have. It's the same reason why a radio station will play your music. If you've got a total of 100K followers, well, maybe it's something that we should probably play these guys because they've got a decent following. They've got a pretty good following. They're not going to play you if you got 200 followers. They're not going to do that.
Oh,
so that's
you
why,
hit it. Yeah, you hit it.
Yeah, so that's why that's why social media is going to become even more important. These shows that people are doing, it's nice right now. It's a novelty, and people are interested in it because they're craving music. But in the long term, it's not going to last. It's not going to become a thing. I don't want to sit on my couch on my laptop computer and listen to a band play through the speakers on my MacBook or laptop or whatever you're using. No. I want to go and I want to feel it hit me in the chest. I want to feel those chills go right through me. When the opening chord, comes out, when Jack White of the Raconteurs comes out and starts jamming, I want to see that. I want to see the intro of the Iron Maiden show. I want to see the explosions at a Kiss show or a Motley Crue show. I don't want to watch that stuff.
Yeah, you just said it. We are rock and roll. And you look at one of the tours that, although it officially has not been canceled yet, but the Motley Crue tour. You just said it. What was one of the biggest topics, funny as it may sound, when they announced that tour? Everybody on social media, one of the most comical things that people talked about, what do you think Tommy's going to do on the drums for this tour?
Yep.
Kind of funny. But that was a viable freaking conversation. But why? Because if you ever went to a Motley Crue concert, Tommy did something outrageous. Whether it was way back in the day, the first time he had that drum kit start rolling as he played drums, or later on where he had his crazy little roller coaster, Tommy was going to do something special. So that added to it. But you can't get anything out of watching on a TV screen or your iPhone. No. You know what I mean? And I'm sorry, I am a concert promoter. And here's the other thing. I told you I spoke at MIT for years, and I always said my best advice I could give for me as a promoter, when I'm promoting shows, and I have everybody in the world who's always trying to hire me, especially a lot of bands. I get it all the time. Is there a way we can hire you to promote our shows? Well, other than one or two, probably not, because I always said you have to believe in the product you are selling. So me as a promoter, when I'm hired by these venues to promote shows, they're not hiring me to promote some tribute band of some artist that I was never into. Because one, the people that follow me, they're most likely not into that band, and I can promote it all I want. Nobody's going to go to the show, and I'm going to be a failed, operator for that one. I don't want that to come back on me. But the shows that I love myself and that I'm promoting, it's easy for me to promote. I'm a fan. I'm all over social media saying these comments about that band. I'll post one of their videos. Oh God, I remember when this first video came out and I posted the link to YouTube or something like you just said. It's because those shows live are everything. And we know it because if it's on the TV, even if they're doing a live broadcast, it's not the energy. You don't feel, it doesn't hit your body like you said. You don't have the crowd around you. The crowd around you is what it's all about too. That's your moment to share. Yeah. The old days with the powder ballad, and everybody started with their lighters. Even now people hold up their cell phones. Those are chilling moments that you don't forget when you look around the room and see everybody with their iPhone even out right now, lit up, whatever that song is. You chill for a moment. That's what connects you. And the band is looking out there and they're connected. So we don't have that. So we're going to need that. That is a need society has to have happen in the future. We just got to figure out how to make it safe for everybody, how to make it work financially for everybody. And that's why these bands and artists out there need to start thinking now what they can do to help themselves.
That tour with Motley Crue and Def Leppard was such an important tour for rock and roll because as I had my son on earlier this week, one of the questions I asked him, because he's been to a lot of concerts with me, I said, are you and your friends now aware of who Motley Crue is? And he's like, absolutely, because of the dirt. And I asked him point blank, would your friends know Motley Crue more or Van Halen more? And he said Motley Crue. Because Van Halen hasn't really done anything in the last 20 years, whereas Motley Crue puts out this movie that every kid heard their parents say you can't watch it, so now they want to watch it. And if you look at the Forbes magazine article last year about the demographic change in who's buying Motley Crue's music and merchandise, it went from 35 and over to 35 and under as the majority. So this was a concert tour that was important for younger kids, the younger generation, to experience that. And I know there was a lot of pushback from people, in the industry saying, oh, they said they were never going to tour again. Listen, there's only one thing that makes more money than the farewell tour, and that's the reunion tour. And if you think that Motley Crue was going to waste an opportunity with all of them still being alive after that movie came out to make millions and millions of dollars, you're a fool if you thought that they weren't going to do that.
Right.
I mean, anyone in their grandma would have done that. So but I'm just disappointed that some of these shows that are just not going to happen, especially that tour, because I know my 15-year-old son and his friends were pumped and excited about seeing Motley Crue.
God, you're making me teary-eyed here thinking about what we're missing right now. But no, you're right though. So many of these bands that were huge have connected with younger people. Some of them have been able to do it better than others. And it just goes to the point that it all goes back to live music. No matter what's going on with the state of rock and roll, the most important thing is the ability to see these artists on stage. It's what produces, like you just said, Motley Crue, Def Leppard, Joan Jett, and especially Poison. If you're going to see these bands out there on the road, the minute that show is done, how many people are racing to pick up a guitar and they've gotten it. They got their hallelujah moments right there. They may be, how many kids are going with their parents to see a tour like that just sat there and made sure that mommy and daddy are getting them a guitar for Christmas, and that's what Santa brings them. And that was it. That may be all for them, that hook. That may be their moment that said, I want to do this. I want to entertain. I want all these people around. When that little kid is looking around and seeing all that, he's just, wow. The kid in the rock and roll candy store. That's something pretty darn important.
I took my son to see Butch Walker when he was 5 years old, and he wanted to pick up a guitar after that show. So your words ring true.
That's the influence of what is so important and what society is missing out. We can sit here and talk for hours about everybody from the bus drivers that do the tour buses to the people stocking and selling popcorn at the shows. This is right now, this whole coronavirus has affected everybody, but the fact that the live show and what tapers down from that show, we are missing more than anything. I mean, everybody's trying to reinvent themselves and do different things. Myself, and if I can throw a plug out there, which is kind of funny, we've just said it. March 8th was my last show. My last show with Sponge, and how ironic that was it. One of the last songs they played was, Molly, and I love that song, and it was such, the fans were just loving it, and we were talking after the show, and text each other the next day, and it was just really great. And if I had only known that was my last concert for quite a while, how more it would have done for me. And now time has gone by, and I'm one of those people that I'm in that category 4. When will things reopen? Whenever it does, I'm the last, and my job out there. I haven't had a paycheck for 2 months now. I'm still waiting on my first payment from this PUA. I haven't gotten it yet. So, this has hit me hard. We're talking about all these musicians and everybody you've talked about. Guess what? I'm a statistic. I'm a number. So I've been sitting here going, what am I going to do? And believe it or not, it was fans of the music out there that have been hitting me up of late. A lot of them have been saying, of course we miss live music. We miss you, Julian. We miss Mr. 80s. We miss that persona on stage. We miss that voice on the microphone. We miss the music you would play, guest DJing, playing special song sets between each band for that genre, whatever it was, whether it was taking us back to the nights on the Sunset Strip, or like doing one of those Yachtly cruise things where I was playing all this cool yacht rock and you just felt like you were out on a boat in the marina in 1978 or something like that. So believe it or not, I started my own internet radio station, and I just started it days ago. And it's called Mr. 80s Radio on Live 365. So it's Live 365, live365.com, and you just type in Mr. 80s, MR80S, radio. So Mr. 80s Radio. It's on all the devices. You can just pull up the Live 365 app on your Android or your iPhone. And you can just click that on and type in Mr. 80s Radio. Don't use any apostrophes or any of that stuff. And my station will pop on. And I'm playing 24 hours of music of all types of genres. I have 3-hour blocks. I have a yacht rock. I have an 80s hair band station on that. I have new wave. I have pop, dance, and rock, or, all the pop and dance music of the 80s. I have 70s rock. I'm playing glam rock. I even have disco. So all the music that I personally love, that I miss playing and being around and seeing those shows, I've put together 5,000 songs that are just being played every day constantly. And I recorded all these little Julianisms, these just me trying to connect with you as if I was at a show. And I just started this a few days ago. And the easiest way, as I said, you can just go to Actually, Mr80s.com, MR80S radio.com, Mr80s.com. And the cool thing is, although I just figured out how to get this radio station working, because this is all new, I'm reinventing myself, is what's coming. And what I've decided to do, and you really, really, really inspired me on this, is I want to start doing live segments on my radio station, just as any other radio station was out there. And I want to start inviting all my rock and roll celebrity friends to come on my little station and use that to tell us what they're up to. What are they doing right now? And what do they want to do in the near future? I want them to reach out to the fans out there. And so I kind of created a platform that will be able to do that in the near future. How great for me will it be? Like, I made the joke about Eric Singer was the one that gave me the moniker Mr. 80s. Well, I want to get Eric on the show and just happen to be playing my music and play all those cool Sunset Strip 80s hair bands we never hear anymore, that even the top 40 rock stations out there are never playing, and play those deep cuts of all those great bands we haven't heard. But let me get guys on there. Let me call up Don Dokken and Eric Singer and all the rest of them I know, and just get on the line and just say, hey, how you been?
As long,
you know what? I bet they can't.
As long as you play the Eric Singer project, I'm good.
Oh, ESP. Are you kidding?
I love that.
I'm going to play. And that's what I wanted to see. That's just it. That's what inspired me to do this. Like you said, I want to get on with Eric and I want to just bullshit with him for a few minutes and then play. Of course, yeah, whoop-de-doo, we can play some Kiss. But no, you hit it. I bet if I started playing some Union and some ESP and some Badlands, people are going to, what are they going to do? They're going to do just that. They're going to go, oh my God, I forgot about this. Oh my God, that whole, and that's why I created this radio station. I'm trying to do my hand. How can I, Mr. 80s is a promoter who has no concerts to promote right now. What can I do to make all the people out there? I used to also make a joke. Every show that I did, everybody comes up to me every single show and they shake my hand and they hug me and they say thank you. And they go, I don't know how to thank you for putting the show together, or however they conceive my involvement was with that show. And all I do is every single time for all these decades, I look them right in the face and I truly say, no, thank you. I would not have a job if you people didn't come out and what? Support rock and roll, support live music. I put it in my hashtags. I always do those 30 maximum hashtags every Instagram post. Hashtag support live music, support local music. And that only happens if everybody out there comes to shows. When we get back to music live, the only thing that's going to help is if you all come out when it's safe to do so, but to all come out and do it. So that's one of the things, like I said, I hope this Mr. 80s radio I have does something, because I would love to get all the rock and roll people out there on my show. Hey, call it whatever you want, call it ego, but it's time I call in my markers. I think for a couple decades of some of these bands, all I've done is sit there and got people to their show. I think I reserve the right for a few of them to say, hey, give me 10 minutes on air and say hi to everybody. But more importantly, let them know that you as the band, you as the artist, you guys are thinking of the fans. You know, we're all missing the shows, but, you know, let's hear it from them. A lot of them are dead quiet in the water, like you said. You know, we're not hearing from any of these bands right now. So I hope this new radio station I did, gets people listening. And it's 24 hours. You can log on anytime, and I bet you're going to hear a song you like. So hopefully your fans out there will listen, and hopefully for all of them, if you go to Mr80s.com, I even put up a thing on there so you can, comment and ask questions and give suggestions. And that's what I'm going to use. I hope soon to do try some Facebook Lives, do like an all hour of requests, and I'm live on Facebook with everybody I know, and have them, like you said, ESP project. Hell yeah. Whatever your artist is out there you haven't heard for a while, let me know and I'll play that right there on the station live. we're all, we talked about hashtags, right, a minute ago. Hashtag, we're all in this together. You see the news, and you see people, the kids doing the chalk the walk thing and putting chalk on their sidewalks, and you see banners of businesses, that have hand painted little posters they put up. We're all in this together. Well, we are, meaning everybody from the person that goes to a show, that buys and downloads an album, to the musician and artists that are writing the songs, that are, making and singing the songs, to everybody behind the scenes, from everybody in the recording artist, recording business, to the actual tours that work on the tours and that are doing everything. We are all in this together. And I really hope that we do not let rock die, that we come together, and although we know it's taken a hit, and it is going to take a hit, and we're going to lose a lot of bands out there, and it's going to take a while for people to feel safe to come to shows. I think if we all remember, it can come back. I told you I'm a speaker at the Travel and Adventure shows, and I'm doing a bunch of work for them right now where I get to speak. They have a hashtag for Back to Travel, and it's a campaign they launch, basically saying the same thing as the message we're talking about here with rock music. They are telling people that we can't travel. You can't go to Europe. We don't know when that's going to happen, but dream it, plan it. That's their advice. Travel will come back. And I've said that in some promo ads for them, where I look into the camera and I say, we as people come back, travel comes back. And travel is all going to be there. The demand is going to be there. People are not going to want to just stay home. People are aching to get out, whether it's locally going to see parts of America, or finally when they're allowed to and feel safe, that they can go over to Europe and go to wherever, go to, Asia, South America, wherever it is, they're going to travel. Travel comes back. Music, concerts, music will survive. It's going to take a hit, but it will survive. But there's also a responsibility. If you love music, then you've got to do your part. And that's the only thing I can say to everybody out there. I hope everybody comes together and we keep it alive, even if it's on a heartbeat for a while, that we get that heart pumping and we get everything we want back again. It may be different. It may change. It may look different, may sound a little different, but no matter what, music is ours. And let's build a new future around what we love so much and that has given us so much,
Well, on that note, I thank you for doing this. Is there anything else you want to plug besides Mr. 80s?
Yeah, I guess it's to plug. If there's anything, like I said, to find out more about me and who I am, for those that might know already, I got the chance to talk about Mr80sradio.com, which is brand new. But obviously, we talked about social media. I am all over social media. And Instagram is where I try to do a lot of what I do. So Julian Douglas, at Julian Douglas on Instagram. You can find me there. And Listen Journey Saver. Listen Journey Saver. LISTEN Journey JOURNEY Saver SAVOR. Listen Journey Saver is the blogs that I started writing about my time all across, traveling the world, and music, food, and of course travel. So I have a lot of blogs up there. There's going to be a lot of interviews coming, including YouTube. I'm giving my YouTube, but I just started a YouTube channel like a couple days ago. I don't even know what the heck the link is. I know it's Julian Douglas and Listen Journey Saver. And I've got some stuff up there. So all of that will be on my social media. So it's a great way to find me. It's a great way to find out about the bands I'm working with and what they're doing. So I hope, if anything, please follow me on Instagram. I would love that. And you can follow Listen Journey Saver on Facebook. Julian Douglas on my Facebook, unfortunately, is always maxed out at 5,000. I can't do anything about that. But I am on Twitter. I never really use Twitter. I bounce it off my Instagram, but that's at Julian Douglas. But I'd really love anybody out there to follow me on Instagram. I post pictures and videos of everything I'm up to, and definitely Mr. 80s Radio is going to be something. I can't wait to get together with all my rock and roll friends and let them speak and talk to everybody. So,
I definitely will throw those links out when this episode airs. And absolutely, man, you were awesome. I'd love to do another episode with you on the Sunset Strip back in the heyday. I'm sure you've got a lot of stories.
I would love to.
That would be great. I would love to do that.
3 hours.
But
yeah,
no,
a 3-hour tour with Mr. 80 talking about
we'll do like a trilogy: hour 1, hour 2, hour 3.
Yes, exactly.
Well,
fantastic.
Well, Julian, it was great. Thank you very much. A lot of great insight, great conversation. I really enjoyed it. Once again, everybody, that's Julian Douglas. I'm Jay Scott. This is The Hook Rocks, the Ultimate Rock Community Podcast. You can find us on Facebook at The Hook Rocks. You can find us on Twitter at The Hook Rocks. Y'all take care, and we will chat again soon. Thank you.
Thank you.